needing arms of grace to hold us through the darkest hour.
Okay, welcome back. Greetings, I'm Krista Jan Ryan, and I am your host today for Recovery from Religion, where we come to learn to live in the acceptance of our losses and look for the hope and healing through Jesus Christ. We are back here with Russell Lane, doing a second part of this continuation of our show, and I thank you for giving me 2 hours of your time. You really hit a nerve, Russell, when we were discussing, and one of the reasons why this whole inmate and working with these guys hit such a nerve was because of the recidivism of 9 out of 10 guys goes back. And to me, that just brought up the importance of, because that's the number one question I ask the guys beyond, like I always ask them, why are they in? If they want to tell me, they'll tell me. If they don't want to tell me, but it's continually, I would say 8 out of 10 of them is because they relapsed doing drugs or alcohol, their PO picked them up, and off they went in the paddy wagon. But recidivism it's not just a topic in Vermont. It is a topic that's pretty profound around our country. And so it brought to light for me that what can I do to help that, to equip them so that they don't relapse and they don't go back and they don't end up back in that position emotionally, mentally, or even physically, because we always believe that most circumstances of relapse is because it's you're with the people, persons, places, or things that put you there. Some of them don't have the choice to be able to relocate out into a different thing. But the one thing you brought up, which I thought was pretty interesting, is that we talked about, let's see, how can we address this without, that the system is set up for the relapse.
It is, actually, and I know that people, that unless you have been in the system, you don't understand it. As a normal citizen,
Like, I don't understand it, and that's why I believe it really hit a nerve with me, because now with all the corruption unfolding and unraveling, it would only make sense that, of course, it's in that system. But you, as a person who was in the system, I'm sure you saw more than the average person, or just because you had the awareness of it.
I think the average citizen doesn't have the time to really look at what is going on in the criminal justice system in Vermont, and not just in Vermont, but other places. But
I would think it would be countrywide.
Right, it is a countrywide thing, but we're living in Vermont, so talking about Vermont, the problem is that there's a lot of things that goes on that people want to do something about, but they're living their lives. Whether you're a person that has somebody even in the system, you want to do a lot for them. But the problem is you're so busy living your life, you can't do it. You don't have the time.
You're preoccupied.
You are, and the system knows that. I hate to say it. I believe they know that. They know that you're so busy that they can do things without you knowing about it because you're so busy, you don't watch the news or you don't see this or that. So,
well, we do watch the news, and unfortunately it's not the proper presentation of what's really going on.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's the other problem, is that, I'm very concerned about the recidivism rate because of the fact that I don't know what the statistics are. I don't know what they are, but,
oh my gosh,
but I do know I do know this, that you have people that are sentenced for crimes in Vermont. Each county has their own setup of what
their own jurisdiction,
and they sentence people to what their county sentence people to. Two people can commit the same crime, they can live in two different areas, and one person can get sentenced, for suggestion, 2 to 5 years. The other person gets sentenced 3 to 15 years. So the issue is that I've always been concerned about is how many people in Vermont is the crime rate really, really exploding? Or is it because the fact is the same people are in the system doing the same time for a crime they committed maybe 5 or 10 years ago? They are getting federal funding for everybody that is in the system, that is incarcerated, and that makes a big difference. I believe that the Department of Corrections is an industry in the state, and there's a lot of people that are concerned about their jobs, and that's why there's issues like this. And it's a very sad situation. It shouldn't be like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, wake up, you know, like, you better look at this.
Yeah, because it's not, the thing about it though is that you have people of different age groups. That's another issue that I have, is that you have people with different age groups that have different mind mentalities. I feel that everybody is categorized and everybody is not. As you get older, your mind develops. When somebody's incarcerated for a long period of time, maybe, like, I know that there are people that get in and get out, you know, can go out on FSU or probation and things like that. I get that. But if you're somebody that's in the system and you don't ever get out, and you do your whole time in there, it makes it extremely difficult. And, you know, I feel bad for the guys that really do want to change. Now, I understand for people that volunteer, whether it's Christian organizations or other organizations that really want to help guys to come out here and be successful, there are a lot of them, sadly to say, that have been burnt out from people that they've helped over the years, and it happens that way. But and I understand that people may not want to hear this, but you still want to keep reaching out, because there are guys that are in there that really do want to get out. The other issue that I have is you have two people that commit the same crime that are inside. What happens is that the person that is a goofball, they will let in and out, in and out, in and out as many times as they want. The person that they really wants to change and really wants to get out and stay out, they make it extremely hard for that person to get out and to be able to do what they've got to do, because they know the person that's going to really want to change and the person that's going to keep coming in and out. The reason why is because it's about money. If the person in and out is coming in and out, then they know they're not changing.
And they're going to keep getting the funding.
That's right. They're going to keep getting it because the person's not learning. And that's, again, I'm sorry, crime is always going to be here. There's no reason why we are allowing people to have, to keep going in and out of jail and them not wanting people to get out and make a living. It's a sad situation. And I don't mean everybody has to do the time for what they've done. I get that, and I respect that 100%. But at the end of the day, there's multi-million dollars, whether it's in Vermont or all across the country, that is being spent. And people are not changing. And it's very, very difficult for me to see people that really want to. I know people that want to change, but they can't get out. They can't get out.
Well, one of the things, and I've talked to you about this, was being that we've discussed that it takes a village, it takes a community of why when these guys get out. I mean, they're bullied, they are put in positions of really terrible jobs and faced with the fact that, oh, you should be lucky that they're willing to hire you. And, so there's that whole mentality first of what they come out to,
Right.
which is the stigmatism, which is the fact that you were no good and blah, 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 blah. But the thing that I've been really trying to educate my viewers is that it would make sense And I'm not asking you to take them home, I'm not asking you to open your doors to them, I'm not asking you to go too far beyond treating them like human beings, because they deserve the right to be here as much as you do. But as I got to work with these guys, I realized that when they were released, they were given a stipend of anywhere between $12,000 and $15,000 for 1 year's rent, and food, and certain guys. So, okay. If they go back into the system, it now costs us as taxpayers $72,000 to $80,000 per year from state funding and federal funding to keep them in the system. So in my mind, as a tax-paying citizen, wouldn't it make sense to you to be able to help this person adapt and get into the society? There's, as you well know, there are places that offer support where they can go, like the soup kitchen down in Bennington. They can go there any night of the week. They can have they can do game night. They can have dinner. They can have Bible study. They can come to CR. I mean, there's enough to keep them out of trouble, right?
Yes.
Rutland doesn't offer that.
The other thing I wanted to bring up too, and I haven't said this yet, and I probably should have, is that another reason why recidivism rate is very high, I think, is if you are there, when people get in trouble, they can go to an area where there's a lot to do, and it gives them more to do.
Right.
But if you're somebody that lives in a very small area, there are some areas in rural areas. There is an area that I know that only has 275 people in it. That right there, a guy may get out and be happy, but the point is they're going to go back in. There's nothing to do in an area with 275 people, especially in a rural area where there's elderly people. No disrespect on that area either. But if these are people that are younger, of course they're going to
idle hands, devil's tools.
That's right. And the other thing is too, is that I don't know if people understand. When you're on house arrest, it is a lot different than being on probation. House arrest is like you are serving time in prison. So you are mandated to do scheduling, you're mandated to do a lot of things. So what you, there are things that you may do, you may not be breaking the law in general, but if you are not obeying by the curfew and the laws of FSU, they can put you back in jail. So something that would be okay in the eyes of the law will not be okay, because these are the restrictions that you have being on house arrest.
Okay, give me a for instance.
If you are, let's say that you have on your schedule, I don't know what it is now, but before you have it on your schedule, you want to go to the grocery store. You write down from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 3. If your probation officer or the FSU officer goes by there, and let's say you are, take a cab or something like that, and your cab doesn't get there until late or whatever. If the FSU officer comes there at your house at 3:15 and you're not there, you're going to jail. So you have to, accordingly, when you do a scheduling, you have to put down, you may put down 3 o'clock, but you need to make sure in your head, you've got to think about, okay, I got to leave, I got to be home before that time. I got to be home around 2:30.
Right.
I can't be there at 3 because if traffic or anything comes up that's not in my control, I could go back to jail because of that. So those are not things where you're breaking the law in general, but you're breaking the rules that they put.
So there's a big difference between breaking the law and breaking the rules.
That's right, and being when you're in the system.
Okay, so now maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, so if the rules are getting broken, that's enough to get you thrown back?
It can, and it really does depend on your record with being in corrections. If you have given them a lot of problems, maybe not in that time, but over the time that you've been in, if you've given them a lot of issues, they could put you back in because you have given them problems. It really depends on how you really conduct yourself.
Okay, so isn't it kind of at that stage of the game up to the parole officer? So let's spend a little time talking about the difference between the parole officers and what they're equipped to do or not to do, or what they lean to do or what they don't lean to do.
I really think it really depends. I think that you have some probation officers. It depends on how you come across. I think it depends on the, as much as we don't want to admit this or think about it as a convict, everything on paper is gold to them, everything. So even if you have changed.
So what do you mean by, I'm sorry,
Okay,
when it's on gold?
Well, I'm saying everything that is written on paper, anything, let's say that.
Your write-up, your record.
Anything,
your
yeah, that's right,
schedule.
anything like your record, your criminal record in general. If you've got, your probation officer has your criminal record right there, that's what they're gonna look at. They're gonna look at what you have done, what you're doing for the period of time that you're out there. They're gonna look at that. But for the most part, when people read, when you're inside prison, when your caseworker or anybody reads your record, that's what they're gonna go by.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how it is. It's
That's
on
what I
paper.
go by.
So even if you do the right things,
In jail.
they're going to look what's on paper, and it's going to take a while. You can do all the right things. Okay, you do all the right things. You can be doing really well, but you mess up that one time. That's what they're going to be acknowledging for the rest of the time.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the guys, when I do get them down in Bennington, and some of the guys I ask, I try not to focus on the crime.
Right.
But what I do focus on is what did you do? Because I believe whatever you are doing while you're in prison is going to predetermine what you do when you get out.
That's right.
So my question always goes, so what kind of work did you do while you were in there?
Right.
What kind of help did you seek? What kind, and
That's the problem. They don't get any help, and that's the problem. And
at
that's-
a choice or what's available?
No, what's available for one thing. The other issue, it's all about money. Everything is about money. Unless you're doing a program, like if you're doing a sex offender treatment program, or you're doing, maybe they have, from what I understand, the sex offender treatment program is the longest program they have in the whole state.
And how long is it?
It used to be, like I said, it's been a while now, but it used to be, you could be up to 3 or 4 years if you're high risk, if you're high risk.
Yeah.
If you're
See,
low risk.
I firmly believe, and they're doing this now with a lot of the addicts and alcoholic,
Okay.
that most all programs are geared towards 2 years in order to
Yes.
really change a person.
And again, if you're going to change, again, we said this in the last segment, Jesus is really the only answer.
Yeah.
The programs they can be good tools, but Jesus has to be your number one focus. You can read, you can read your word, you can do everything you need to do, and you can use the secular programs if you'd like, take out what you can get and throw the rest away.
That's what we say.
Absolutely.
Take what you need and leave the rest.
That's right,
Yeah.
because you want to get all the help that you can. The problem is that there's not enough help. You got to realize how many guys, or even some women, how many there are, and how many people that really that they need to try to help. It's just too many.
Right.
It's way too many.
Well, I know that AA and NA, I know that they go in a lot. And that's, because that goes along with the slogan of, doing service. And it's pretty, I think they go in at least once or twice a week, as far as I know. And I know it's around the country.
Yes.
Because what they're trying to do with that is to carry the message, which is if you drink, you die, or worse yet, if you drink, you come back, right? So, but let's not digress. Let's go back to how the system is set up. And how the system is set up, I guess I have to say it, the system is set up for you to fail.
It is. I
don't want to believe that.
I didn't want to believe that either. And I know that there are going to be people that are going to say that's not true. But again, you cannot tell me that guys are not wanting to get out. I'm not saying there's not a percentage of guys that just don't care. I know there are.
Oh, I
That's
know there
everywhere.
are
That's
too,
everywhere.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if there is, you can go, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think you can tell the guys that really are sincere. Now, I'm not saying that people that go in, when they first go in, may not have that attitude, but when you're in there for a long period of time, and you have to experience what it's like to be in there, I think at some point as you get older, you feel like, okay, I've learned my lesson, I've learned. The problem is that a lot of guys sometimes, they go in and they come out worse than they did before they went in.
Oh, yeah, that's what all the TV shows show you.
And they're recognizing that, and they are really recognizing. There was an issue about that a while ago, that they're realizing that this is a problem. People are coming out, they're learning how to do more criminal activity when they get out than they did before they went in. That is not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I understand everything's about money. I understand that, okay, we can't help everybody because we don't have the federal funding, or we don't have the money to be help getting all these counselors and getting all these people. But again, institutionalizing a person and making them just do dead time is not helping them in any way, shape, or form.
There's no rehabilitation in that.
Yeah, there is.
So then comes the question, and I don't know if Vermont is big on it, so how are the inmates getting more drugs, more contraband, more alcohol? I mean, how does that happen? I mean, my bags get checked.
Well,
My
it
bags
does-
get checked, I get the rundown, I mean, so without saying it or insinuating it, is certain people checked more than others?
I don't think it's all volunteers. I think it's people that
Work
Yeah,
in
we're
the
there.
system.
That's right. Now, what happens is I feel that people that are in the system, sorry to say, they may not be very strong individual people in general, and the inmates can get at them to a point where the guard may say, okay, I really need this or that or whatever.
You mean money?
Yeah, whatever
But
it might
how do
be.
they get the money from the prisoners if the prisoners have no money? I mean, how do the prisoners get the money? Do they get the money from their family?
They've got to, I don't know how
I
that
need
whole
to-
thing, I don't know how that whole thing works, but the issue is that it's not just in Vermont, the whole country is facing this. This happens so many times.
Yeah, because somewhere, somehow, there's money coming out of the prisoners, whether they're going in and backed by syndications or gang members. And so then my mind automatically goes, how does it get from the syndication or the gang members into the prisoners? Do you have a checking account or a savings account that you're allowed to have when you're in jail?
Yes, you can.
Okay, wouldn't it make sense that if it's over $100, a little flashing light would go off, or
Well,
even over a couple $100, a little flashing light would go off?
Sometimes they want people to hang themselves, so that may be, that should be the reality of it. But what happens though sometimes is sometimes they know what's going on, but they allow things to happen because they may be able to get phone information by people on the phones. They're not dumb. They know people. You have conversations.
So they can trap outside.
They can
what's
trap
going on.
outside, or they can.
I mean, now we're getting that down to like CSI here, where,
Yeah.
you know, where it's really starting.
Yeah.
The momentum of how bad do you want to get the drug rings, but they don't. See, that's the part that really makes me angry. I don't see a lot of drug cartels going down. I don't see the Crips going down. I don't see the Bloods going down. I don't see like any break in the system. If some of them are in jail,
Right.
and they're still out there, and they're funding the ones that are in jail, right? Why that red light isn't going on or after $100,
Right.
and then the guys outside that are doing the funding aren't getting caught. That's what I'm not getting.
It's,
I mean, we're talking like high performance technology nowadays where this type of stuff, I mean, I watched them. I had a guy that came over the other night and he goes, I don't watch Chicago PD because it's so corrupt. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's so real. I mean, to me, it's real. I mean, how do these guys function? They, you know, whatever, we're not going to digress, but the reality of it is, in our day and age today, I mean, I'm not a nuclear scientist here, but I would think at this point in time, being able to apprehend the criminal has gotten maybe 1,000 times easier, right?
Well, that's the thing, and that
The drug lords, I mean,
and that just shows you that it's not that it's not they can't take care of it. There's other things that are involved. There is something going on.
oh, that's dirty cops,
Right,
we can get it,
yes.
yeah, we can go there.
We could go through a lot of things.
Oh,
So you're right. Technology has progressed 1,000 times in the last how many years, and is still progressing. And that's the problem. And that's the problem that not just in Vermont, the whole country is facing.
Oh, yeah.
It's
out of control.
It is out of
It's
control.
totally out of control.
It's all about money.
And we're wondering where and why Vermont is having the highest amount of heroin, and I mean, it's devastating because I don't believe we're prepared for being able to handle it. It would, you know, it's not Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's not New York City. It's not New Jersey. We're talking about little old Vermont here. And we have kids dropping dead every day from the fentanyl infusion and the heroin overdosage. And to me, it's like, I'm finding it really unacceptable.
It's tough, you know, and you know, I don't want to see people, you know, making money off from people's misfortune. I understand that people need to pay the crimes for what they've done. I understand that. But people are being, the taxpayers in this state are paying for things and paying for people to be being in corrections, and they're not getting any kind of help. They're not getting anything. They're not, I mean, I've seen how inmates, they're disgusting in there. They're disgusting. They can't take care of themselves like they need to. I understand that people commit crimes. But when people can't afford, when people, they smell, they can't buy soap, they can't do anything, and it's not provided for them, I'm sorry. That's wrong. That's mistreatment. And that's one of the things that I don't like about Vermont. They do not, they cut back on all the things that really are important. If somebody doesn't want to take care of themselves, hygiene-wise enough, that's their choice. But when they can't afford to do it, because the state has cut funding, because they're not going to do that, because they want to be able to use Keefe and all these other places to be able to make money off from people. I'm sorry, that's a little bit too wrong for me. That's not right.
Yeah, one of the guys shared with us this soap story, and I mean, I had to literally scrape my mouth off the table and put it up, and all my mind kept going to was, we're talking about soap here. This guy didn't have soap. Yeah.
And they do. They have little Bob Barker stuff in the Vermont. They have Bob Barker stuff, but it's nothing. It doesn't. If you don't have deodorant and stuff like that, somebody needs soap that's going to wash them up and that's going to have a little bit of a smell to it. Because when you're inside there, you're around other people. I mean, if you don't have deodorant or something that's going to make you smell good, it gets pretty bad, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, I would think.
It gets really bad, because they don't have air conditioning. Some places you can have fans and stuff like that, but that's not a lot.
And that's why it always amazed me. God bless her. Every year she goes up and brings in white socks for the guys.
Yeah.
Mary Gratz. God bless her. I mean,
Yeah.
and everybody says, what? And I said, yep, I'm collecting all these bottles because the woman takes these bottles and she buys socks.
Yeah.
And in their mind they go, how about books? I said, how about socks? I mean, just the reality of having clean white socks to put on.
That's right.
Right?
And that's the thing about when you're in there, you take so much for granted, but when you are out, when you come out, You know, that's the other thing is too, and this is another thing that's been really something that it's been weighed on me, is the fact you have so many people that volunteer to help people, and that's great. But when you're in the system, you have a very high rate of going back in on violations and going back in and things like that, which is sad. But the problem is when somebody maxes out their bid and they are no longer going to be in the system, if somebody's going to help, they should literally get up and help them, because they're no longer going to be in the system. So that means they're not going to have any more restrictions, they're not going to have any more of these other things. So when you see that, because that doesn't happen a lot, so when you do see that, it's like, okay, we're really going to help this person because we don't want them to go back in. If they can get out of the system and be able to get a good job and be able to get their lives together.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear of this. When they are maxed out,
Yes.
and they are ready to go and
Yeah.
out into the society, that's when they're most vulnerable
They are.
of being
Yes.
able to be brought back.
Yes, they are.
So that the place or wherever they're brought back to continue to get the federal and state funding.
That's right. The other issue too, this is another issue, is that when you are in the system, they will help you get places sometimes. They will have different places. Okay, we'll help you get into here. We'll help you get into there. But the only reason why they're doing that is because you're still in the system. You're under their supervision. So they will sometimes help you get a place,
Right.
and all that stuff. And they'll help you. But that's because of the federal funding, because of the money situation. But when you're no longer in the system, when you're the last day that you're there, if you're out at 2 a.m. in the morning, they're throwing you right out, and that's it. That's it. You're done. They don't have nothing to do with it.
Okay, so let's go back to if you're still in the system and you get some federal funding to help you with, the rent and
Yeah.
how much is the actual jail
Yeah.
or system
It used to be
still?
called gate money. It used to be called
Gate
gate
money.
money.
Okay,
Gate
go
money.
ahead.
Now, the gate money is very hard to get now these days.
Good.
Very hard to get. They don't give gate money out like they
So
used to.
gate money would still go back to the actual facility.
It would go to the landlord. What they would do, from what I have understood, they'll write you out a check, or write your landlord or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
They will write them a check, and they will not give you the cash, the inmate.
No, I wouldn't either.
They wouldn't do that. They'll give it to the landlord,
Mhm.
and that will help you. Now, I think it depends on the person and each individual case how much they're going to give for gate money if they do.
So my question is, does
Okay.
the facility
Mhm.
get any money when they're at that stage? Like, I know the person that's getting.
I think it's federal money.
Uh-huh.
I think the gate money is federal money that they get from the federal government, the state does.
Mhm.
And then they give the money to whomever they choose, I think,
Mhm.
whoever qualifies for it. And again, that's for rent, that might be for clothes, I may be for.
See, I think that's still going on, because I think this is what our state representative's husband was doing in the system piece that he was. And that money, the gate money, was going to these various apartment complexes and houses
Yep.
where it was very lenient,
Mhm.
no rules, no laws.
Yes, that's terrible.
And then the end result was, I thought I heard approximately 3 months was usually the maximum before the PO would come and carry them back to.
Now, was it because they didn't have a job?
No, it was because they would start drinking, start drugging, there was no supervision, there was no curfew, there was no restrictions.
Yeah, see, and again, that's a setup, it's another setup, and everything. So, again, like I was saying before, if you send a guy out and back in society, and back in Vermont, you've got, again, another thing is too, is that most of the time when they put you back out, when you go back out, you gotta go back into the area that you're from. And the problem.
I thought that was a big no-no.
But
I mean,
it
that's
isn't.
a no-brainer.
But you would think so, but that's not what it is. And to me, that's a setup. You're sending somebody back out in the community where they committed a crime, the victim may live there and all that, so you're going to send them back to the same area. But see, what's happening right now is that, I was discussing with you, Chittenden County has the biggest money, this is where most of the money comes, is from Chittenden County. They have the most jobs in the whole state.
Right, you were telling me that.
And I'm not saying that there's not other jobs in the state, but this is where the biggest funding for the whole state of Vermont comes from. So what it is, though, is that if you're sending a guy back out into the community, and there's no work out there, and the person was a drug dealer making thousands of dollars a day or whatever it might be, so you're going to tell me that this person is going to try to go out and get a job, he can't get a job. You think that this person is not going to go back to the lifestyle they went into because they can't find a job. They don't have any kind of support system. There's nobody out here to help them. You can't do that.
He'll be back in a month.
That's what I'm saying, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why the recidivism rate is so high, is because people need work.
Okay, so then that leads me to the next question do the system not, I mean, I would think that people need an advocate, whether it's from the judicial system, that like this is no-brainer stuff, like somebody out in the actual system, like the judicial system, because I've been, asked to sit on panels and be an advocate, but I would think that the prisoner needs an advocate. A person who knows that can help them, direct them, not the parole officer,
Right.
but an advocate who would know this kind of information and help them with the decision making.
People need, this is why the community, and I'm glad that you do these programs, because the community needs to get more involved. I understand. The problem is that it's very difficult when you have people in the community that work a 40-hour week job,
Right, I know.
have kids and all that. The problem is people that need to get involved, but they have to have a passion for it. Or people that are retired, and people that may be wealthy, that may have money. I think one of the biggest things that should happen, I think that Vermont has one of the best things, the best thing that's going for Vermont right now for the incarcerated people is that they are hiring people that are convicted felons. They are, and the reason why they are is because
It's a no-brainer.
they're losing money in this state tremendously. They've lost almost 4,000 people. I don't know from what year to what year they've lost 4,000 people, and they need people to work to pay taxes. They need people.
So they can get subsidy.
That's right. They need money. So what they're doing is people are taking on people that are convicted felons, and they're giving them chances. And I think that's one of the pluses right now. Now, I understand, and I was telling you, that they get a kickback for doing that. But see, even if their motives may be wrong by doing that, God is using that to help other people. So their motives may not be right, but it is making a difference for people, because it is hard. It's not right. When somebody has committed a crime and they've done their time and they really want to change their life over, they should be able to go out in society and be able to get a job.
And move on with
they
their
should
life.
be able to.
Absolutely.
Now, this is another conversation. I just had this conversation. Now, I would like your opinion on this. Okay? A person came to me and told me they have never had any trouble with the law before. They've never had any problems. But they were in a situation where they went to try to apply for a job. And a convicted felon went there and applied for the job.
Same job.
The same job. The convicted felon got the job, and the person that never had any trouble with the law did not get the job.
Well, I believe what's happening is the workforce places that are taking on the responsibility of hiring them have to hit a certain percentage of that many hired a month or a year or whatever. So if the quota is lower, then they're going to take over, because you and I were talking about this, that they get subsidy if they hire them. So if they're low,
Now, the company does it.
the company
Yes.
that hires them
Yeah,
gets
yes.
subsidy.
Yes.
So if they haven't reached their quota of being able to hire a convicted felon,
Yes.
then they're going to have to take the felon over the other person.
All right, well,
I mean, it doesn't, make it right,
Right.
but if we're in that position where they're already getting subsidy,
Right.
and they have to meet a quota, and they're not making that quota yet,
Yes.
then they're gonna have to go with the convicted felon.
And that's one of the things I like about Vermont. Vermont is doing that. And I know that there are some other states that are getting a little bit more involved.
Waking up to it.
They are. Kentucky is one of them.
Oh, I would think Kentucky would have to be.
Kentucky is one of them, which I think is great. I think that, again, I think it's important that people deserve a second chance.
Mhm.
They deserve a second chance, regardless of what they've done. You know, and I think that, you know, whatever God has to do to shake our lives up. And again, sadly to say, being a convicted felon and committing a crime of any sort, it doesn't take it away. But God says in His Word that He uses all things together for those that love Him and that are called to His purpose and plan. And that's the whole deal. And God doesn't care. See, the thing, God doesn't care what He does to get our attention. He might do it. He may let something, the most horrific thing ever happen to our lives. But if it brings us to Him and we get saved and we come to know Him as Savior and Lord, then that's what He cares about more than anything.
Oh, yeah. It's never the circumstance, it's always the outcome.
That's right. And that's what's so important. And I love that. I love that so much. And, you know, I like I said before, I am very passionate about wanting to help people. And I really want, I want people to be educated. Not because I want to cause any kind of frenzy or anything like that.
Right.
But I want to see human lives touched. And I believe there are people in the criminal justice system that are inmates that really want to change, but they keep getting knocked down over and over. And what happens is when you have that drive to succeed and do well and you keep getting knocked down, what happens is your self-esteem gets lowered.
It breaks you again.
It breaks you again because you have that drive, and then it takes even more time to get that right back up there again, and then
Or not.
And then the guys they don't even know how to act anymore. They're like, how can we trust these people? How can we trust this person with our lives? You know. So I understand how that can be. Men, I'm not saying everybody, but men are very fragile sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're very fragile, and when you break a man's spirit more than once, you know, it's very, very difficult sometimes to get them back. And the only person that can, again, that's Jesus. He's the only one that can heal.
Trust is a big topic. Trust is, you know, I think out of, you know, we talk about faith and we talk about all that stuff. But let me tell you, that is one thing I am still working on is trust. Trusting in God, trusting in the circumstances, trusting. I mean, when you, like you said, you've been beaten down so many times or you've been broken so many times. And sometimes I think God will continue to do that so your trust level will change.
Right.
You know, but a lot of people don't want it. You know, there's a vulnerability that we are, that we each feel is permissible in order for us to allow ourselves to grow more. But when that vulnerability has been violated time and time again, I believe it just sucks the spirit out of you.
Absolutely.
Totally out of you, so that you'll get to a point where I think that only Jesus can bring it back.
I just want to say that everything that has been discussed today is not to dehumanize the Department of Corrections.
Yeah,
It is not to do anything but to educate people and understand that when you have never been in the system before as a normal citizen, you truly don't see behind the scenes. You don't understand the political things that go on. And I don't want to shake anybody's cages. I don't want to do anything. The only thing I want to do is I want to see guys that are inside, that are incarcerated, that want to get out and have an opportunity to get out and be able to turn their lives around.
A fair opportunity.
That's what I want. That's all I want to see.
Right.
I understand.
Not walking out into a setup.
That's right, and I don't want to see that no more because it's not fair. You know, we need Jesus to be real in our lives, and you know we hear all the time about in-house religion. Well, the reason why there's a lot of in-house religion is because people are broken they've never really experienced a true encounter with Jesus Christ, a true Savior. And that's one of the biggest issues that goes on. And it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means, we're living in a state right now that you were just saying that's the second atheist state in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a very
used to be the first.
Yeah, and now we're the second. So the thing about it, we need to really understand that if we want people that are in the system to succeed, that Jesus is the only answer. We need, and people want that. People want Jesus. They want Jesus. They just don't know it because they're it's just one of those things. Another thing I'd like to say too is that one of the things that I heard many, many, many times when I was inside was that I'm not going to church because only sex offenders go to church. And it was really, really upsetting. And I made a very serious declaration. I went one time, somebody was there, and they said that. And I said, you know what? If that's what it takes for somebody to come to Jesus, then guess what? Then it's worth going for. And they did not like that. But I said, that's just a cop-out. It's a cop-out just because somebody is a sex offender. You don't have to like what they've done. You don't have to like the crime. I understand that. I get that. I don't expect anybody to like it. But at the end of the day, people that commit sex offenses are not always bad people. They made bad choices. They did something wrong, and that's the way it is. Yes, are there a lot of mentally ill people that are in the system? There's mentally ill people in all of us, in the whole country.
Right.
All of them.
Yeah.
It's not just Vermont, it's everywhere.
Right.
So at the end of the day, people that get categorized in a sex offense record, and a sex offense in general in Vermont, is everybody's categorized the same. Nobody is. There's no difference in the system. In the system in Vermont, you're not categorized where you're going to be with people. You could be in a cell with a murderer. You can be with anybody. No matter what the crime is, everybody's put together in the Vermont system. They're mixed, and that's a very dangerous thing on top of it. You got somebody that's doing a life bid with somebody that's doing an 18-month. I experienced that. I had somebody that was doing a life bid, had a guy in there who was doing 6 months, and this guy was talking about getting out, to this guy that's doing a life bid. I mean, whoa, are you and the system, and they allow that? No, you don't, that's crazy.
Did the guy make it out?
He made it out, but he almost didn't.
Yeah, I would think.
Because the guy kept talking about it. I mean, what are you doing? You don't, and that's why they send a lot of guys out of state now.
Well, that might have been his sanity plea.
And I understand.
That he's getting out.
Right, and that's great.
Yeah.
But you can't, that's why the people need to be categorized when they're in any state, not just Vermont, any state. They need to be categorized. You don't put, if somebody's doing a short term, they stay with short term people. You don't, and that's why people are out of state. That's why people go out of state. Because the people that are doing life bids, they want to do their time comfortably. That's another thing we didn't talk about, we can talk about a little bit too, is that the people that are in Vermont do not want to come back to Vermont. The people that are doing life bids do not want to come back to Vermont to do their time. They do not want to come back here. I was down there many times when the Vermont caseworkers came down, and it was said, if you send us back there, it's going to be the last thing you're going to regret. They do not want to come back here to do their time. Because Vermont has their rules. These guys are doing their time. They just want to be left alone. They want to do what they got to do. They get extra special privileges being out of state compared to what you get in Vermont. They don't want to come back here.
Huh. Wow.
I was out of state. They do not want to come back here. They want to be left alone. They do miss their families. I'm not disagreeing with that. That is a big issue too. They're so away from their families. But at the end of the day, they just want to enjoy the time that they've got. Because they're never going to see the light of day again. So Vermont needs to understand that a lot of guys that are doing Vermont out of state, there's a lot more Christian activities going on for Christians.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more going on. You come back to Vermont here, there's stuff going on, but it's nothing compared to what's going on down there or out of state.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes on down there for them and everything. And I understand that.
So have you listened, have you reviewed or thought or heard anything about what Trump's input has been? Because I know I've heard many times him offering certain reforms, certain programs. Like I said, the gentleman who is doing the same program that I'm doing. He did it out in, he's doing it out in Las Vegas. And he ended up at the White House during National Prayer Day, and Trump allowed him to say the national prayer for the National Prayer Day. So I would think, and we've talked about this, is the acknowledgement that there's more inmates being released in this country than ever before.
I think one of the things that happened, I don't remember when it happened, but Trump opened up private prisons again. He opened up the private prisons. Obama shut the prisons down. Trump reopened them back up.
When you say private prisons,
like CCA, Correctionals of America, CCA. It's called Corrections Corporation of America. And then GEO is another one, another private prison. They're bigger.
So what's the difference between the private and?
The private, they can get away with doing helping inmates more than the state can.
Huh.
They can do more for them if they choose to.
Do we have any Vermont that got opened?
No private. There's no private prisons. They won't do it. From what I understand, they won't do private prisons in Vermont because
there's no money in it.
There's no money into it, and because the fact is what is a union? They're a union here in Vermont, so they won't do that. They were talking about bringing CCA in, and they were like they went right up in arms. Like, no, we're not having that.
They'll take away a lot of jobs.
That's what I'm saying, though, and that's another issue they were talking about too, from what I understand, is that in the St. Albans facility, they wanted to build a big prison there. But the problem with that, how are you going to do that? You've got all these other little facilities. You're going to tell me that you're going to open a big prison. What are you going to do with all these facilities that you already have? What are you going to do with them? So you're going to tell me everybody that works in Newport, Springfield, all them, they're going to all have to go to St. Albans for a job? That ain't going to happen. So, I mean, that's just another issue all on its own. But the issue is that Trump opened back up the private prisons, from what I understand, because the fact is he knew that the crime rate was going to explode. And he does feel that the crime is going to explode.
Well, with the drug level at the rate that it is, why wouldn't it?
And not just that, the illegal immigrant. Now, the things are happening.
He did a statistic on it the other night when he was giving his speech at the UN on how many still illegal immigrants are still in this country. But the one thing he's doing, which I am so grateful to hear, is he's now making and enforcing voter ID. And if you're not an American, you don't get no voter ID.
And that's good. And they're not giving any more people welfare, and they're not giving any more food stamps. If you come over here from another country, if you cannot sufficiently take care of yourself, you're back. You're out of here. You're going right back over here. And that's the way it should be, because there's too many people that are taking advantage of the system.
Oh, I know.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I could tell you some stories, even and it's just sad. It's a sad thing, and I feel bad for you taxpayers, that you citizens that have never had any trouble with the law. It's just what it is. So I feel bad. I feel bad for them.
Well, I think we're really not only politically, everything's coming to a head with the corruption.
Yeah.
And I think that's why when you said this, it was like, it kind of like stirred me right up, because I work in it, and I've never viewed it, but to me it makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, the recognition that, crime does pay. I mean, really, when you boil it down, that crime does pay, because it's fueling facilities that people basically are holding down very expensive jobs. So, I don't know. I thought it was something that really needed to be brought to light, Russell. And I think I got a huge education on it, and I think people need to be educated with it. It's a choice. How do we handle them when they get out? And I think the reality of it is, that's what I'm trying to impose in the way I educate people. You have a choice how you're going to treat them. They deserve second chances. They paid their time, they did their time, and now, they need to get on with life as we know it. And you can either help them, or you can be part of the solution or not. So, thank you once again. I really appreciate it, and I really value your wisdom. And because a lot of us don't go there, think about that. So thank you again. You have been with Russell Lane, and I am your host, Krista Jan Ryan. You have been watching Recovery from Religion. where we come to learn to live in the acceptance of our losses and look for the hope and healing through Jesus Christ. And you have been watching the segment of Hearts in Need of Healing, of which I hope to continue to be a part of, because I believe it's in that healing process that we really come to be one with Christ and one with ourselves. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
We are all wounded children, needing arms of grace to hold us through the darkest hours and lead us to a brighter place. Oh, Jesus, love